Leila Morgan had always known she was destined for more than the quiet corners of the corporate world, where interns were usually forgotten, shuffled between fetching coffee and taking notes. From the moment she stepped into the gleaming glass tower of Meriton Enterprises, a sprawling multinational conglomerate, she felt the weight of opportunity resting on her shoulders, fueled by a fierce determination to prove herself not just as a black woman in a predominantly white space, as someone whose sharp mind and unwavering courage could change the game entirely. It was her first day assigned to the legal department, a dream placement for a law student passionate about justice and fairness, and she quickly immersed herself in the stacks of contracts, memorandums, and legal jargon that most overlooked. But something about the contract drafted for Meriton's new employee stock option plan didn't sit right with her keen instincts. A dense section, buried deep in the fine print, contained ambiguous language that effectively stripped employees of key rights to contest unfair terminations or to question profit distributions. Cloaked in legalese that would confuse even the most educated reader, she noticed the language cleverly included what she would later call a trap clause, one that could quietly disenfranchise the very people the company claimed to value, allowing executives to redirect profits while leaving employees with nothing but vague promises and zero recourse. Despite her status as a low-level intern, Leila understood the gravity of what she'd found and wrestled internally with whether to speak up. The corporate world was notoriously unforgiving to those who challenged the status quo, especially young black women like herself, but her conscience would not allow her to stay silent. The day of the big contract review arrived, and the polished conference room filled with executives in tailored suits and glistening watches, their confident banter filling the air with an intoxicating mix of power and entitlement. As the CEO, Richard Hanley, prepared to finalize the deal, Leila's heart hammered fiercely, but she gathered her courage and raised her hand, her voice steady but clear as she interrupted the flow of discussion to point out the problematic clause. She had discovered the room fell into stunned silence, all eyes now on the young intern who dared to speak truth to power. Several executives smirked or exchanged skeptical glances, whispering that an intern had no place questioning such critical legal documents. But Richard Hanley, a man known for his razor-sharp business acumen and iron will, took the contract from the lead lawyer and scanned the highlighted section himself. As he read, the confident smirk faded from his face and was replaced by a pale, almost ghostly expression. He realized immediately the potential legal and ethical disaster that lay within the words on the page, a clause that could expose the company to lawsuits, destroy employee morale, and invite public backlash that would cripple their reputation. The weight of that realization hung thick in the air, and the room's atmosphere shifted from casual confidence to tense uncertainty. Leila's voice had cracked open a door that many had ignored or never even seen, and though some still hesitated to acknowledge it openly, the evidence was irrefutable. The CEO's face remained pale, not just from shock, but from the dawning awareness that this young woman's vigilance might have just saved the company from catastrophic consequences. In that moment, Leila wasn't just an intern anymore. She was a catalyst for change, a reminder that truth could emerge from unexpected places, and that courage, no matter how small the voice, could shake the foundations of power. This chapter of her life, which had begun so humbly, was about to explode into something far greater, a journey that would test her resilience, challenge entrenched systems, and redefine what it meant to stand up and be heard in a world that so often tried to silence her. Leila's discovery of the trap clause had sent ripples through Meriton Enterprises, shaking the polished veneer of the corporate powerhouse to its core. And in the days following that pivotal meeting, the CEO, Richard Hanley, made a surprising and decisive move that stunned many. He appointed Leila to lead a special investigative task force charged with uncovering how the dubious contract clause had been inserted and who was responsible for sanctioning such a reckless and potentially illegal maneuver. Though some executives grumbled, questioning the wisdom of entrusting a young intern with such a high-profile assignment, Richard's confidence in Leila was unshaken, and he saw in her not only the sharp legal mind needed, but the moral clarity essential for rooting out corruption buried deep within the company's leadership. Leila quickly assembled a small, diverse team of trusted legal experts, auditors and junior investigators, many eager to stand behind a leader whose courage had already challenged the status quo. They began with a meticulous review of past contracts, board meeting minutes, and internal emails, hunting for any signs of irregularities or pressure that might have influenced the contract's wording. As they delved deeper, the scope of the deception began to reveal itself, a tangled web of collusion between certain board members and external legal consultants who had crafted the trap clause to maximize their own profits while shielding themselves from accountability at the expense of employees and vulnerable clients alike. These individuals had exploited loopholes in the company's governance, manipulating the contract's language to siphon millions from company resources under the guise of complex financial structures and risk management strategies that only insiders could decipher. The more Leela uncovered, the more dangerous her mission became. Whispers of her investigation spread through the company corridors, and some powerful figures, threatened by exposure, began subtle efforts to undermine her work confidential. Documents went missing, key witnesses were intimidated, and anonymous warnings hinted at personal and professional consequences if she pressed too hard. Yet Lila's resolve only strengthened. She knew that justice demanded perseverance and that the stakes extended far beyond. Meriton's boardroom, real lives and livelihoods hung in the balance. She worked long hours, juggling interviews with hesitant employees and piecing together a growing dossier of damning evidence, each revelation more shocking than the last. Alongside her team, Leela mapped the flow of illicit gains, traced the secret communications that had facilitated the scheme, and documented the stark contrast between the company's public promises and private betrayals. Despite the mounting pressure and isolation, Leela found unexpected allies, a handful of courageous employees willing to risk their positions to share insider knowledge. A few whistleblowers who had remained silent out of fear but now saw hope in Leela's determination. These allies became vital in building the case that would later shake Meriton Enterprises to its foundation. Throughout the investigation, Leela maintained constant communication with CEO Hanley, who publicly stood by her even as behind-the-scenes tensions rose among the senior executives. His backing gave her authority, but also placed her in the crosshairs of those desperate to protect their interests. In quiet moments, Leela reflected on the immense responsibility she carried as a black woman leading a fight against corporate corruption in an arena often resistant to change. Every step was fraught with challenges far beyond legal battles. She confronted systemic bias, subtle attempts to discredit her, and the weight of representing voices too often silenced. But Leela's courage and clarity of purpose forged ahead, fueled by a deep belief that exposing the truth would restore integrity to the company and offer a beacon of hope for others trapped by similar abuses. By the end of this grueling phase, the investigation had not only uncovered the architects of the trap clause, but also exposed a broader culture of greed and exploitation that demanded sweeping reform. The evidence was so compelling and comprehensive that it would later lead to immediate firings, regulatory scrutiny, and a corporate reckoning that none involved could ignore. Leela's leadership in navigating this storm solidified her role not just as a legal expert, but as a fearless advocate for justice, ready to challenge power wherever it hid and redefine what accountability truly meant within the corporate world. The chapter closed on a moment of uneasy anticipation as the board prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The truth was out, and the fight for Meriton's soul had only just begun. Leela stood at the precipice of a confrontation that would determine not only her future, but the fate of Meriton Enterprises itself. With the mountain of evidence painstakingly gathered by her team laid bare, she prepared to face the board of directors and top executives in the company's grandest, most high-stakes meeting yet. The tension in the sleek glass-walled conference room was palpable as the powerful figures who had once dismissed her warnings now sat uneasily, their confident facades cracking under the weight of impending accountability. The CEO, Richard Hanley, had made it clear he was behind Leela, standing by her side as she methodically dismantled the carefully constructed deceit woven into the infamous contract. With unwavering poise and clarity, she exposed how certain board members, in collusion with external legal advisors, had deliberately inserted the trap clause to funnel profits away from employees and manipulate the company's financial standing. For personal gain, Each piece of evidence, from internal emails to financial records, was presented like a scalpel, cutting through layers of obfuscation and half-truths. Some executives fumbled to defend themselves, throwing blame onto one another, or insisting on technicalities, but Lila's presentation was airtight, every claim countered with incontrovertible proof. The room buzzed with murmurs as board members realized the extent of the betrayal, their schemes laid bare before colleagues, investors, and the CEO. The atmosphere was electric, with a mix of shock, anger, and a desperate scramble to salvage reputations. Richard Hanley's expression was stern but resolute. He publicly commended Lila's courage and integrity, acknowledging her role in steering the company back from the brink. As the meeting drew to a close, several corrupt executives were immediately suspended pending further investigation, while others resigned in disgrace. The CEO announced sweeping reforms designed to restore transparency, fairness, and accountability, committing to rebuilding trust with employees and clients alike. Outside the boardroom, employees whispered of the historic shift, their morale lifted by the promise of a new era free from exploitation. Lila's triumph was not just personal, it symbolized the power of one voice to ignite systemic change, challenging entrenched power and demanding justice. The chapter closed with Lila reflecting on the hard-fought battle and the road ahead, knowing that while the confrontation was won, the true work of transformation and healing was just beginning. Would you like me to write Chapter 4 next? Lila, a sharp and fearless young black intern at Meriton Enterprises, discovers a hidden, malicious clause in a major contractor trap designed to siphon company funds and exploit employees. When she boldly confronts the CEO, Richard Hanley, about the deception, his initial shock quickly turns to decisive support as he empowers her to lead an internal investigation. Despite intense pressure, intimidation, and attempts to silence her, Lila assembles a team and uncovers a deep web of corruption, involving senior executives and outside legal consultants who manipulated the contract for personal gain. Armed with overwhelming evidence, Lila exposes the conspiracy in a tense boardroom showdown that leads to the suspension and resignation of corrupt leaders, and sparks sweeping reforms that restore transparency and trust within the company. Recognized as a courageous advocate for justice, Lila's journey transforms Meriton's culture and inspires others to stand against injustice. Ultimately, the story is a powerful testament to the strength of integrity and the impact one voice can have in dismantling systemic corruption and driving meaningful change.